Welcome to tonight's conversation with 7 candidates, we hope, for Oregon's District 2 congressional district. Each of these candidates is vying to defeat Cliff Bentz. 6 of our candidates are Democrats. Whoever receives the most votes on May 19th will be the Democratic challenger. One of our candidates here tonight, hopefully, is going to be a Republican, and that person hopes to defeat Bentz in the primary. I'd like for each of the candidates to make sure they've got their name on their screens so we know who each of you are. And here I'm going to let you know what the format is for the evening. There are no opening or closing statements. There will be no questions taken from the chat. The chat has been disabled. And so we don't want anyone to get distracted from the wonderful conversation that we're going to be having with these wonderful people. We also ask that everyone keep themselves muted, please. There will be 3 parts to the evening. One are questions that we have come up with 8 questions that each of you will get a chance to answer. You'll get exactly 1 minute and 15 seconds. And Teresa is the timekeeper. You'll be able to see a running stopwatch in the corner of her square. And then when she gets down to 5 seconds, she'll hold up her hand like this, which is kind of a warning, like 5 seconds, wrap it up.
Do you see that? So you can watch yourself talk or watch your minutes, keep an eye on my screen. And at a minute 15, we're going to zip.
Yeah, we'll give you a warning, like, hey, wrap it up. So we will go in the order of alphabetical of the last name to begin with, and then that person will roll over down to the bottom for the next one. So if you guys all understand that. After the 8 questions, there will be a lightning round, which we'll be asking for a thumbs up or thumbs down on some very basic questions. And you can either, we'll kind of take a survey as to whether you want to do that with your actual hands or if you want to use the little emojis that are down at the bottom. But those will just be a quick lightning round to kind of go through some basics. And then finally, there will be one last question where you can kind of wrap up. And we should be able to put this all in within 90 minutes, we hope. All right, we have 8 questions for you, and Kathy's going to be asking the first, and the first person who is on the list is Chris.
Chris will be the first one to answer this question, and then we'll move through the answers in alphabetical order. I'll cue you so that you know you're next. Okay. So, Chris, the first question is, please tell us about your educational background, job experience, and political experience.
I grew up in Portland. I attended public schools here. I attended college at Brown University in Rhode Island and have a degree in history and liberal arts. Attended Harvard University's Kennedy School with a master's of public administration. And professionally, I worked in the legislature as committee staff. I served in the legislature, was elected to the Oregon House of Representatives, worked for the Trust for Public Land, a national nonprofit organization, for about 15 years, and worked for the Obama administration at USDA headquarters in Washington for about 6 years at the USDA, focusing on rural economic development. Had a number of other odd jobs, but those are the main activities of my career.
All right, thank you. Mary, do you need me to repeat the question?
I think I got it. Hello, my name is Mary Doyle. I'm from Deschutes County in the Three Rivers area. I'm a 20-plus year educator for Van Pine Schools. I grew up in Beaverton, going through public schools, K through 12. I attended Portland State University, got my bachelor's in international studies with a minor in international economics while studying abroad and matriculated into French University at the University of Lyon in France. I then continued on and got my master's of education from Eastern Oregon University and my administrative licensure from University of Oregon as well. Besides my career in education, I have many lived experiences in retail, grocery, hospitality, tourism, you name it. I've stuffed my envelope with my tips and I paid my dues. I know what it means to have a lived experience when it comes to talking to folks in CD2, and I really hope to win your vote. And if you have any more questions, please go to marydoyleforcongress.com.
Thank you, Mary. Rebecca?
Yeah, so I'm Rebecca Mueller, and I am a physician, but like Mary, before I started that process, I started working at 12, being a daytime babysitter for low-income families, and then worked in a grocery store, was a clerk in the retail world for a very long time. Went to undergrad in a conservative Christian university out in Ohio, and then went to medical school after doing a year as a nursing assistant on the floor, and also got a combined degree of MD, MPH, which is Masters of Public Health. Did my residency training out in Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh, and then spent my first 5 years doing rural healthcare at a combined hospital clinic in Iowa, and then the past 10 years doing the same out here in Medford. 4 years of that was in hospital leadership, and then I'll just say I'm also on the board locally for the Southern Oregon Educational Service District.
Thank you. Peter? Peter, you're on mute.
I was born upstate New York. My first job was doing office work for the local congressman when my mother was his congressional aide. I went to Columbia, studied in graduate school, studied economics and international relations. I'm a 34-year resident of C-2 and a former small business owner, technical writer. I helped create an online professional education company where I wrote numerous classes on the federal and state laws and regulations that govern taxes, banking and commerce, insurance, including the Affordable Care Act, and so on. My first political campaign was LBJ. I worked for the McGovern campaign and Robert Kennedy before that. Most recently, I was with the Obama campaign, actually joined it before he did as part of the Draft Obama movement. And from that, I learned what a great community we live in.
Thank you, Peter. Patty?
Hi, I'm Patty Snow. I live in Phoenix, Oregon. For those of you who don't know of our little town, we are just outside of Medford in the Rogue Valley. I grew up in southern Idaho in a very small town, and I went to school at the University of Idaho. After graduating from U of I got into the business world, and I was in hospitality management for a number of years, managing hotels, and then I moved into the corporate world. I spent 13 years with an IT firm where I was the director of international office services, which just simply means that I made sure that the 110 offices that we had around the world were all working uniquely, but still following the same rules. And then I moved into other types of management. I worked for a gaming company, and then I went into owning my own business in 2020, right at the beginning of the COVID time. So I think my time's up, but that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Terry for our next question.
All right, I'm going to open the call to see if Dawn or Andrea are on the call. If so, speak up. Okay, we're moving on. The second question, District 2 spans a wide area and includes many politically unaffiliated voters. How will you connect with these residents and show that you're listening and responsive to their concerns? We're starting off with Mary.
Well, that comes down to actually showing up unlike Cliff Fence actually does. There's 20 counties and there's a lot of miles to put in. And I do want to give props to Dawn, who is not here, for putting in 9,000 miles already, to be honest with you. I think it's super important that we have a candidate to go up against Bence who has the lived experiences of the folks who live in CD2. I think it's important to have someone who can speak from an authentic voice and not from necessarily an intellectual understanding of what it actually means to struggle. I mean, I have been on WIC. I had to sell plasma once for gas when I was in college. I mean, the struggle is real. And when you live that lived experience, you can easier talk to the folks and make a true connection that is felt across party lines. Non-affiliated voters want to hear the value of who you are and walking through life with dignity. And so that's what I plan on bringing to this candidacy and unseating Cliff Bentz.
Thank you, Mary. Rebecca.
Yeah, so 15 years in rural healthcare means 15 years of talking to folks that are from small town experiences, and 4 years in hospital leadership also means that I've had this crazy experience of trying to advocate for a hospital, advocate for what our local community and population needs, only to have a big city expert try and tell us what we need. And I think that experience right there goes a long way at helping rural folks understand that I see that struggle of having places like Portland and DC and experts in academia think they know what your experience is when they haven't actually connected with folks on the ground. So those one-on-one interactions within the clinic room, I've always worked with rural folks and understand what it means when housing is scarce and jobs are scarcer and the schools are failing and you just don't have enough resources coming back to rural communities. The last thing I'll say is I do have a Christian conservative background. I'm still a Christian, no longer a conservative. And I also think that that will help me bridge those gaps and build trust with the constituents.
Thank you. Peter.
I was at the Wayne Morris Gala this past weekend, and there were some great speakers. The last one said that we can't go back to the status quo, because we can't just say we're going to go back. We need to come up with new big ideas and then deliver on them. But what she didn't do was offer any big ideas. Sort of like the sketch, what we need. Oh, a great idea. What is it? Well, that's what we need, a great idea. So I just today I wrote 5 big ideas, including slashing military spending, retiring federal debt in 10 years, Immigration Board of Governors, and so on. I'll post them on my website, www.pqnow.net. And I think that offering brand new ideas that are non-ideological, bipartisan, will be a way to really excite and bring out those non-aligned and some Republican voters as well.
Thank you, Peter. Patty. You're muted.
Let's try that again.
There you go.
I've been very vocal all along that even though I have been a Democrat my entire adult life, I am what I am calling a purple candidate. In other words, I am not running just to represent the Democrats. I'm running to represent everybody in our district. And along that lines, when I have traveled around the state, and I don't have quite as many miles in as Don does, but I'm darn close, that I have made sure that when I'm in these communities, I'm not just talking to the Democrats. I go out in the community and I'm talking to Republicans and to non-affiliated voters. I've even had some really interesting discussions with some MAGA folks. And even though we didn't agree on the issues, we had civil conversations. And at the end of our conversations, we shook hands and we thanked each other for being civil in our conversation. And that's what I believe in. Represent everybody, talk to everybody.
Thank you. And Chris.
So I've worked in the legislature and served in the legislature, I think total of 5 legislative sessions. And during those years, I interacted with people of all persuasions, both parties. I worked with Republicans, people from rural communities, rural Democrats as well. Over those experiences, as well as my time with the Obama administration, I gained deeper and deeper understanding of the challenges of rural communities. And as I said, in Salem, I had the chance to work with Republicans and people from rural communities and develop relationships and get along. And sometimes we agree and disagree, but those experiences will guide me in this position. And I'm highly confident that I can speak to people who aren't affiliated with parties because people have, over the last 15 years, really increasingly left the two parties. But I think I understand why, and I look forward to talking to them, working with them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy.
All right, our next question. How will you
This is Dawn. I'm joined the group. I'm so sorry I'm a little late. I was at another event.
You made it.
Okay.
Yes, I did. I'm so sorry. And could you repeat the question? I believe it's a minute. Is that correct?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, the question is, District 2 spans a wide area and includes many politically unaffiliated voters. How will you connect with these residents and show that you're listening and responsive to their concerns?
Okay, great question. I'm doing that right now. Actually, I just got done with a meet and greet out here in Pendleton. And part of this means understanding that you have to actually talk to people. One of the things that I've done as someone who has had a business that I've worked with 5,000 people, working with them on their resumes and careers, means asking a lot of in-depth questions and, more importantly, listening and reframing their comments so they feel validated. And that's helped me cross a lot of lines, including talking to a lot of Republicans and non-affiliated voters to demonstrate that I'm not only understanding, but also validating their concerns in a way that makes them feel heard and listened to. It requires someone who's actually getting out there and talking to every corner of the state, and also understanding where people's language may lie. It may be very charged, so we have to stay away from those politically charged or polarizing language. So I belong to braverangels.org. It's an organization that's national that is helping people, especially Republicans and Democrats, talk to each other and not use those trigger words so we can actually find that common ground again. And I think that's where I'm meeting people in the middle where they reside, and it's actually really working well, and I'm getting support in that respect. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Teresa, is your timekeeping off?
I apologize. When Dawn came on, I got busy changing her name and adding the spotlight, and I forgot to start the timer. Dawn, you get 1 minute and 15 seconds going forward, and you'll see the stopper on my thing. I was, yeah,
That's
sorry
okay.
about that. Anyway, you wrapped up well, so appreciate it.
No technical difficulties. All right, Kathy, question number 3.
Okay, and forgive me, I'll be a little scrambled on who goes next because I had it all.
Rebecca.
I know who starts first. It's just
Okay.
putting Dawn in the mix there.
Got it.
So our next question, and it will start with Rebecca. How will you address both immediate risks and long-term sustainability for rural health care in our district?
What a great question. So, I mean, the immediate risks, we need to repeal all the cuts that happened during HR 1. And that's the first and foremost. So getting back the subsidies that allow people to have affordable care, marketplace plans that are on private insurance, and then also increasing back to Medicaid. And I'll let Patty bring up her topic that in terms of other ways to fund that. In terms of long-term, the stabilization has to start with funding, but it can't end there. I do believe in Medicare for all. I have a simple 3-step way of getting us there as a nation. I'm really excited that Oregon is well on its way to getting there. I do think we need to have portable insurance plans for people that are in private insurance. I think we need to incentivize states to look at ways to have public options at the state level, and then also look at public options at the federal level as part of the ACA marketplace. But we also need to be looking at infrastructure and workforce, because in rural areas especially, we're behind on that, and I have ideas about that, but I'll end my minute there.
Thank you, Rebecca. Peter?
Well, first, I agree with everything Rebecca said. It was excellent. We need to understand that we're heading for a healthcare calamity. Congress in the 2025 Budget Reconciliation Act slashed Medicaid CHIPs by $1 trillion over 10 years, which is about a 30% cut. And our district will be one of the first to suffer. Over 40% of our district rely on OHP, and 70% of our children do. Republicans cynically delayed these cuts until after the midterms to try to hoodwink you. And even before the cuts, Madras' St. Charles and Hermiston's Good Shepherd were in danger of closing. St. Alphonsus and Malheur and Baker is struggling to maintain services. Ashland Community Hospital is closing all but emergency services. Hospital and clinics are also the largest employer in over half of our counties, so it will also devastate our economy. Be sure about this. People will suffer, people will die. Our current representative supports these catastrophic changes. It will be my highest priority to repair this damage and develop sustainable, accessible health care for the district.
Thank you, Peter. Dawn?
I'm here. Okay, I'm going to borrow some medical language, and it's going to sound a lot like puns, but unfortunately, it's actually pretty close to the truth. So right now, we are in a triage situation. Our patient is literally on the table bleeding out with our healthcare. It isn't going to collapse. It is collapsing. And so most immediately, we need to repeal all of the HR1 provisions and restore funding back to some of our most important funding programs for the most vulnerable people. And hospitals are not getting reimbursed quickly enough, but with Medicare, so that's leaving them really facing huge catastrophic financial cliffs. We need to work on that. And, I'd like to see us get to a point where we can have a single payer option that is going to be getting all of the profit out of the whole mix here. That is the biggest concern I have, that we should not be making healthcare a profit margin only. So it's going to take a lot of unraveling to focus on fixing everything, but we need to take care of things immediately and getting that funding back. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Patty?
Okay, the first thing we have to do is we have to repeal the part of the HR1 bill that cut the provider's tax. Very simply, the provider's tax is a state tax paid by healthcare providers, and that is the money that funds our Medicaid system. That is a matching fund from the federal government. They cut it from a 6% tax to a 3.5% tax, which means the money going to our rural hospitals was cut almost in half. That is why they're in threat of closing. So we must repeal that part of the HR1. We also must support what Elizabeth Warren and Josh Hawley have proposed, which is to stop the vertical integration of healthcare monopolies that control the vast majority of every step of your healthcare. And that also means we must get rid of pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs. We are one of the only countries that have them. They are the people that negotiate the prices for everything between the health insurance and the pharmacies and the medical units. And that is why we pay more for drugs than any other developed nation. We must get rid of PBMs.
Thank you, Patty. Chris?
So in the HR1, there is a provision for this $50 billion Band-Aid to support all the damage that the bill did to rural communities. It's kind of a joke. It's a total fig leaf, but the Trump people were trying to do something to help rural healthcare, but it doesn't work. It's not enough. We need a holistic approach. I personally believe we've got to figure out how to do this with both parties. When one party is passing major legislation like this, it's easy for the next party to spend the next 10 years trying to repeal it. I would like to see a more holistic approach that gets both parties involved with bringing the Oregon Health Plan to the nation. John Kintzhaber has supported me. He's architect of the Oregon Health Plan, and I would look forward to working with him in Congress to bring that type of basic health care provision to the nation. And I think there are Republicans who might support it as well.
Thank you, Chris. And Mary?
Yes, ditto what the lady said. And moreover, that rural healthcare is both emergency infrastructure and economic infrastructure. When a hospital or a clinic closes, people lose care, jobs, and the ability to keep their community alive. So for the immediate risk, I would push for an emergency federal stabilization fund for vulnerable rural hospitals and clinics, especially critical access hospitals. So they are not forced into cuts or closure because of short-term cash flow crises. And we need to fix the payment model, eventually move into a single payer system, which I fully support. Rural supporters cannot survive in urban-based reimbursement formulas. I support higher Medicaid, and Medicare reimbursement rates for rural care tied to actual costs, not the volume alone. And we need to protect the core services. We need federally essential rural services standards so communities do not quietly lose ER care, labor and delivery, mental health, and ambulance support. And we need to build the workforce pipeline by expanding loan repayment, rural residencies, nurse training partnerships, and incentives for providers who commit serving rural communities in the long term, and strengthening long-term access, investing in telehealth, broadband, mobile clinics, behavior integration, and my time's up.
Can I add one thing very briefly?
Thank you, Mary.
Can I add one thing very briefly?
We're going to move on to the next question. Terry?
First, Peter, so here's your question. What policies would you support to promote affordability for all and reduce the concentration of wealth and power?
What I wanted to add was Chris mentioned $50 billion. That's $50 billion spread out over 5 years, where the cuts are over $30 billion a year. So you do the math. One of the big ideas I mentioned earlier is an asset appreciation surtax, which would bring in, I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but I think it brings in $3.4 trillion a year, which I would use to pay down our current federal debt and have about $1 trillion left over to fund our programs. It costs about $100 billion for Obamacare, about $100 billion for SNAP, and so on. So I also propose massive cuts, huge cuts to military spending that would yield us about $300 billion a year. So between those two revenue changes, we would have enough to fund education, healthcare, affordable housing, and so on.
Thank you, Peter. On is your turn.
I'm getting there. Thank you. So number one, as far as reducing inflation, I would say the most immediate things is to reverse the illegal executive orders for the war and also the tariffs. And between the two, I'm very, very, very concerned about the increasing gas shock that's going to be coming our way with the Strait of Hormuz being blocked. It's the ripple effects are going to be all over the globe. We're shortly going to be seeing gas, I'm sure, between $7 and $10 a gallon. That will be affecting everything in our lives. We're already suffering from high inflation right now. So we need to get out of those wars and that war. And we also need to remove these illegal tariffs, which are killing our small businesses and also impacting Americans. It's some ridiculous number that every family's shouldering additional funding on that. And so for me, I think the biggest thing we need to do is to help get rid of those two things and then work on revamping and overhauling the entire tax code so that the wealthy, ultra wealthy people are paying their fair share as well as the corporations. It's just unfair and we got to fix that right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Patty.
As long as the ultra wealthy and the big corporations have more power than the individual American citizen, we will continue to have this problem. That is why I am a strong supporter of government reformation. One of the things we need to do is we need to convince the Supreme Court they need to revoke their 2010 decision, which was Citizens United versus the FEC, which opened the floodgates for super PACs and allowed dark money to get into our political system. When that happened, our Congress people and the president became more interested in what money they could get and supporting those people, and that is why they get the benefits, not the American people. We also need to finally get rid of the Electoral College and make it so it's one person, one vote. By getting rid of the super PACs so they no longer can put that big money into Congress and making it one person, one vote, your vote will count as much as Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos. So we need to start at the top.
Thank you, Patty. Chris.
So I totally agree with Dawn. The immediate thing of the tariffs and the war and the impact on oil, we need to deal with that immediately, and that'll have some impact initially. Longer term, we're going to need major tax reform, There are plenty of ideas out there from Senator Sanders. Senator Van Hollen has a bill to eliminate taxes under $50,000 of income and then have graduated rates for billionaire class. And this would be a way to begin to start shifting back to a more progressive tax system. I'll look at anything. One idea I've had is eliminating the mortgage interest deduction for second homes and using the savings from that, maybe to apply that to a system to help first-time home buyers get into a new home at lower interest rates versus with lots of conditions. But that might be a way we can help young people get into homes, but we should find money for it. And I think you can find it in the mortgage interest deduction for second homes, which you really should not have.
Thank you. Mary.
Yes, 100% what Dawn and Patty both said, because affordability isn't accidental. It's the result of policy. And right now, the system is absolutely tilted towards wealth concentration and not working families. And I excuse if I'm like, I have a massive sinus cold, so I'm a little bit distracted by how I feel. We need to lower costs directly by allowing Medicare to negotiate all drug prices. We need to cap insulin and essential medication, and we need to expand the child tax credit and earned income tax credit monthly, not yearly. We need to raise the floor of wages and stabilize work by having the federal minimum wage tied to the cost of living. And we need to protect overtime and strengthen union rights by passing the PRO Act. We also need to expand the low-income housing tax credit and federal incentives to build workforce housing in rural communities. And we need to crack down on corporate price fixing in our housing markets. And we need to tax stock buybacks and extreme wealth gains and close the loopholes that are being used by billionaires and large corporations. And actually, for once, let's enforce our antitrust laws and break up monopolies that are driving up the prices, let alone the right to repair for farmers and consumers. So the bottom line is, if you work full time in this country, you should be able to afford a home, health care, and a future. Thank you.
Thank you. Rebecca.
I wish I could talk as fast as Mary, but so I believe in accountable capitalism, which means a couple of things. One, it's good to know that Elizabeth Warren does too and wrote a bill with that title in 2023. And what it specifically looks at is getting us out of corporate welfare. We all know that we're paying the extra funds that the workers should be earning by their own work. And I just really want to emphasize that when workers have to ask for handouts from the government, it erases their dignity, which they are earning by working. And that in and of itself, requiring the corporations to actually pay the folks doing the work is a major difference. But we also need to look at some other big expenses, just to add in something different from the mix. The childcare expenditures are nearly as much as people are paying for their housing. And so the government should be creating subsidies and programs to be able to make childcare not only affordable, but also have it be at a high quality standard. And that would also go far in helping folks afford their lives.
Thank you. Kathy. You're muted, Kathy.
And I haven't even touched my screen. The universe is trying to tell me to shut up. Your next question is, what will be your top 2 priorities in January 2027 if you are elected in November? And we will start with Dawn.
My top 2 priorities will be to, number one, gain as many alliances as possible that are people that think the same thing. I'm a Courage candidate endorsed by Courage for Democracy. And there are 148 of us that are running and have been endorsed by this group. That means that we had to meet a very strict criteria that we agree on anti-corruption and bringing back integrity to the office. So I think building that connection there and then looking at existing folks. I believe in building relationships before you actually need them. And then also making sure that looking at all the legislation and priorities that I'm looking to accomplish during my time there as an action-oriented candidate versus just a policy wonk. It means getting the right people in to advise me. I believe very strongly that good leaders always surround themselves with the smartest people in the room so that they are providing all of the information, data that's unbiased that will help inform inform me to make the best and most sensible solutions and proposals that will help the people of this district. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Patty.
Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to join every other sane person in Congress and demand that there is accountability in the president and in the Congress, and that he be prosecuted for war crimes and any other laws that he has broken. I fully support pushing to have him removed from office just simply because of what he has done to our Constitution. And then after we get rid of him, or at least slap him very hard on the wrist, then I want to work on, as I said earlier, getting the provider's tax reestablished at 6% with a government match so that we can start funding Medicaid again. Now, this is just a Band-Aid. It's a stopgate, just so we can get money back into our rural hospitals and make sure that people aren't going without health care. There are many more things we need to do, but those would be the first two things I would do: accountability and the provider's tax.
Thank you, Patty. Chris?
I think the Medicaid cuts, which don't take effect until 2027. So the priority, I think, for Democrats, and I think many Republicans, will be to relook at the many aspects of H.R. 1 and deal with them as quickly as possible. And I'll be working to find people across the aisle who want to remedy the worst aspects of the bill that they passed this last year. So first is that. Second, if we're still in the war, I'll be working with everybody to get us extracted from the war, which will, by January, if it's still going on, will be having even greater impact on our economy and the global economy as well. If the war is over, I guess the other priority would be getting myself on the House Agriculture Committee to really focus in an area where I've had some expertise when I worked in Washington, D.C. So I'd be focusing on rural economic development policy within the House Ag Committee. So there you go.
Thank you, Chris. Mary?
Yes, like Dawn, I am a courage candidate for citizens impeachment, and I'm also the only invited signatory of Take Back Congress, which is banning congressional stock trading, SCOTUS binding code of ethics, a moratorium on lobbying as well. So accountability has to come first, because without it, nothing else we pass will actually work. So real accountability means using the full power of Congress. Like I said, impeach, convict, and remove all office holders who have violated their laws and their oath of office, and actually enforcing the rules with real consequences, not warnings. And we must end the dark money influence and require full transparency in campaign funding. We have to hold corporations accountable, enforcing antitrust laws, cracking down on price gouging, stop the corporate abuse of tax loopholes and offshore shelters, and then affordability, because once the system is fair, we can make it work. And then we lower prescription drug costs through Medicare negotiation. We expand that child tax credit and the earned income tax credit, and we increase the housing supply and lower the barriers to building in rural communities. So the bottom line is, when we clean up corruption first, then we can deliver the real affordability that actually reaches the people.
Thank you, Mary. Rebecca?
So similar to some of my colleagues here, I think the first thing we need to do is roll back the harms that have been done. And I just want to go beyond HR 1, because before that even happened, we had cuts to our food banks, we had cuts to our school lunches. There's a lot of things that happened earlier than HR 1 that we need to undo, because they directly impact our constituents. The other thing that is a major differentiating factor for me is that while I agree that there has been egregious things done by this administration, I think as a representative of our district, given how red and rural and pro-Trump it is, I don't think that having a pro-impeachment stance as our first thing out the gate is going to sit well with a lot of the folks that we need to elect us. And so my biggest thing is restoring balance, not only by restoring competence of Congress, which does mean holding the executive accountable for his actions, but also restoring balance by stopping this infighting, punching back and forth that so many people see, and understanding that the best way to restore balance is to actually show respect and mutual respect to folks across the aisle and to constituents that disagree with us in our district.
Thank you, Rebecca. And Peter. Peter, you're on mute.
First, I agree wholeheartedly with what Rebecca had to say. I do think we need to focus on what I consider more kitchen table issues. First thing I'll do is join the Problem Solvers Caucus and get on the committees that bring federal resources to the district: agriculture, energy and commerce, natural resources. By bringing federal projects to the districts, it helps with affordability, brings jobs, it brings down costs. I'm blanking. What was the question?
Would you like to repeat the question?
Yeah.
What will be your top 2 priorities?
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, no. So my top 2 priorities: healthcare. We've already discussed it. One of the things I want to advocate for is whole patient approaches. That means you're charged for you're paid, for results instead of for like tests or procedures. That'll save us some money and be more effective. And then AI is my number 1 priority. It's an potentially extinction level event. That means making data centers self-sustaining with regard to power and water, and reining in AI so that it works for us instead of the other way around.
Thank you, Peter. And we'll move on to our next question. Terry?
All right, it's question number 6 if you're following along. First up will be Patty. What's the most damaging decision that Representative Bentz has made, and what would you do to remedy that damage?
Okay, I'm going to sound like a broken record here. I'm going to get back to the provider tax. Sorry, but one of the reasons I ended up joining this race is in May of last year, when they were debating the HR 1 bill, Cliff Bentz stood up in front of people and said that we cannot cut the provider tax because of the damage it would do to our rural hospitals. He stated it will close our rural hospitals. We cannot touch it. The bill went to the Senate. The Senate slashed it by almost 50%. They sent it back to the House, and Cliff signed it, or he voted for it, without even blinking. He didn't say anything. So he knew exactly what that was doing to the people of this district, and he did it anyway, just because he didn't want to stand up against the president. And to me, that is putting the president and his party above the people of his district, and that's inexcusable.
Thank you. Chris?
Well, beyond just voting for HR 1, I think the thing I'm hearing from almost every group I go to, and I think all my colleagues here would agree, is they talk about how Cliff just doesn't show up. And they're not talking about just not holding town halls, although that's symptomatic, but in other avenues as well. They just don't see him. They don't hear from him. And I think that's his biggest mistake. By not engaging with people, by not explaining what he's doing, by not learning from people about maybe he made some mistakes in HR 1. It's such a big bill. Probably be good for him to hear some ideas from folks that they'd like to see changed. So I think his biggest mistake is just not showing up, not being there, not listening, not learning. So that's what I'd say.
Thank you. Mary?
Yes, for me, it's not necessarily just one vote that he has. It's his pattern over time. It's his consistent choice to side with corporate interests over the long-term health of rural communities, especially on healthcare and public lands. So his support for policies that push aggressive logging mandates and weaken environmental safeguards that risks our watershed, our wildfire resilience, and our outdoor economies. It prioritizes this short-term extraction over long-term stability. So what I would do different is I would advance science-based forest management, thinning, prescribed berm, and restoration, not these blanket mandates. We need to protect the watersheds and invest in restoration economies that actually create the rural jobs and have the money circulate in our rural economies. And we need to tie federal funding to wildfire risk reduction and community protection, just not these targeted timber, targets, and critically connecting it to healthcare and affordability as well. So the bottom line is I will put long-term community stability over short-term political wins because rural Oregon deserves leadership that actually protects its future.
Thank you. Rebecca.
So Cliff Bentz's first vote was a vote to not certify the election of 2020. And I feel that that was his most egregious wrong because it showed right away that he was going to pick party over ethics and moral responsibility. With that vote, he told his constituents that despite dozens of lawsuits that were overturned by judges all across the country, despite numerous state bodies that had sent the vote tallies to the federal government to certify that he was not going to stand with those states, with numerous state leaders that put their career and reputation on the line. And instead, he was going to go with Trump. And that type of cowardice at a time when we had an opportunity for a leader to stand up and say right is right, wrong is wrong, and truth is truth has facilitated the continuation of this disinformation agenda of the current president where nobody knows what's real anymore and we can't even trust our leaders to tell us the truth.
Thank you. Peter.
Well, first of all, Cliff Bentz is a weasel. When he was asked if the killing of Alex Preddy was murder, he said he would have to learn more about it to see if the shooting was justified. What did he need to learn? The worst thing he's done is not protect us against ICE, who invaded our state with orders from Stephen Miller to intimidate and brutalize and murder, or running private for-profit prisons where our neighbors are locked up without a hearing in conditions you wouldn't wish on a dog. He does nothing to protect our food assistance to over half the children in CD2 when it's cut. Nothing to protect vote by mail. Nothing to protect our local Forest Service when the stations are closed and research is terminated. And that's why I'm running. I'm running because the voices of the people of Southern and Eastern Oregon are not being heard by Cliff Bentz, not being spoken by Cliff Bentz. Common decency, respect, law and order, peace, prosperity, honesty, and kindness.
Thank you. Dawn.
I would say Cliff Bentz's most egregious thing he's done is he has not upheld his constitutional oaths. And that means protecting our country from enemies, foreign and domestic. Right now, the enemy is domestic, and it is this president and his regime. And Cliff is not upholding the Constitution. He was not upholding it when he did not certify the results. He is not upholding it, protecting the people of the state. He has voted for things that are hurting people, including the HR1, all the different impacts there. He stood with Trump on the war, the tariffs, everything that's hurting our farmers, our families, our healthcare system, our education. He's not said anything about the contamination out here in the western Umatilla and Morrow counties going into the groundwater. He's not stepping up to help out with assistance with wildfires. So he is not protecting us from the Trump administration's rampages through our government. He did not protect us from the DOJ cuts. So basically, he's complicit with everything that this administration has done, and he has failed, and I mean failed, his constitutional duty to us, we the people. Thank you.
Okay, Kathy.
Thank you, Terry. So our next question is based on your background and priorities. Which congressional committees would you like to serve on and why? We'll start with Chris.
I mentioned this before. Given my background working at USDA in the rural development arena, but learning a lot about this massive agency, which has an enormous impact on Congressional District 2, I would try to get a seat on the House Ag Committee and and hopefully work on the next ag bill and reform elements of the department that need reform, and provide more resources for programs that need more and reduce resources where they're not being effective. So I would use my experience at USDA to be effective on the House Ag Committee. So that's a pretty easy question for me.
Thank you, Chris. Mary, you're on mute. Mary, you're on mute.
I would prioritize communities or committees where I can directly deliver for rural Oregon, unlike Cliff Benz, who's brought $0 back. So those would be committees where healthcare, natural resources, and affordability. So energy and commerce would be the first one. This has jurisdiction over healthcare, prescription drug pricing, and insurance markets. This is where I can fight to stabilize the rural hospitals and lower costs for families. And then natural resources. Public lands are paramount in our district. Forestry, water, they're core to CD2's economy and our identity. So I would push for wildfire resilience, watershed protection, and a balanced land management. With it, that folds in agriculture, supporting farmers, ranchers, and food systems across our district by focusing on drought resilience, right to repair, and keeping family farms viable. Why these? Because it directly impacts the cost of living, our jobs, and whether rural communities can actually survive and grow. So I'm not going to Washington to sit on some kind of symbolic community. I'm going where I can actually get results for the district.
Thank you, Mary. Rebecca.
So healthcare committee probably doesn't surprise anybody, except there's no such thing. The healthcare committee does not exist in the House. It only exists in the Senate. It exists in the House as a subcommittee in the committees of appropriations and the Committee of Commerce. And I think that's a problem. I think that we should have a healthcare committee that focuses on healthcare not as a business interest, but as a public good. So that would be the committee I would enlist on, and also work to get it to be its own independent thing, just like it is in the Senate. I would also like to be on the Education Committee, not only to work on the childcare, but also pre-K, especially 3 and 4 preschool. I think that would be a boon to Oregon's educational issues, where we have low graduation rates. There's direct ties with that and access to quality preschool. It would also help us get better workforce education, especially in STEM areas in rural Oregon, which really need a boost, and medical education in all of the different medical fields that we've talked about. And the last thing is ethics. I agree with Patty. I know that's one of hers, that we can't make improvements if we don't change the accountability of the people making decisions.
Thank you, Rebecca. Peter.
Dawn earlier said that she's not a policy wonk. I most definitely am. I said about joining agriculture, energy and commerce, and natural resources, because that's a way to bring federal resources into the district. I also studied economics, mostly econometrics, and so I would I would be on the Joint Committee on the Economy and the Joint Committee on Taxation. That latter committee would be how I would be able to present my notion for an asset tax. And the top 2/3 of the wealthy, the top 10% of the wealthy own 2/3 of the wealth in our economy, which is about $114 trillion. And it's the appreciation on those investments on that wealth that's their earnings. Look, Elon Musk earns $70,000 a year in his salary, but he makes billions in asset increases. So that's why I would put a surtax on that. So they would keep their wealth, but we could still bring that to use for federal programs and pay down the debt. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Dawn?
I would definitely join the agricultural committee, and I just was out at the USDA OSU agricultural research station outside of Pendleton this morning and spoke to Dr. Calderon there, and he was talking to me about how there are so many federal cuts to a lot of our research stations, and this one in particular is concerned about the cereals, which wheat is grown in Oregon. That's one of our major agricultural production areas, and there's a lot of things that the farmers are facing, including increasing acidity of the soil, and the fact that some of the farmers are going to have to start liming their fields just to add more nutrients because the fertilizer is not making it here from the Strait of Hormuz. So we have a lot of global geopolitics starting to impact our farmers in a lot of different ways. Our family farms are already struggling. I see that through increased costs of gas and fertilizer, along with all the other operational increases. They're hanging on by a thread. And also under the USDA, that's the Department of Agriculture, we need to make sure that we are creating more jobs that are in the agricultural industry. We need food on the table from family farms, not big mega corporations. So I'm excited to be part of that committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. And Patty.
There'd be two committees. The first one would be the Committee on Natural Resources. Current statistics show that if we do not change our current climate and the pollutants in our climate, that by the end of this century, our temperature will have raised 7 degrees. 7 degrees is going to be devastating for our environment. It's going to affect our oceans. It's going to affect our land. It's going to affect all of the agriculture. It's going to affect all the wildlife. And so basically every living thing on this planet. And they are also saying if it gets above 4 degrees, it goes beyond return. So we have to make changes now. We have to put clean energy acts in place now. So I want to take care of our environment. The second issue would be the ethics committee. As Rebecca said, I want to make sure that our government is a leader and not someone that is an embarrassment, which currently we unfortunately are. We need to hold our leaders accountable.
Thank you, Patty. And for our next question, Terry.
All right, this is the last question, number 8 that we have. What specific steps will you take to foster bipartisan cooperation and restore a more functional, collaborative legislative process? And we're starting with Mary.
Here we go. Well, first off, I would reach out to those Courage candidates. There's 100 plus of them across the country. And I would reach out as well to the Take Back Congress signatories. Because what it comes down to is to have success in our district is we need to have coalition building. We need to have true bipartisan people who show up every single day, who are going to write the laws, who are going to pass the laws, and who are going to hold themselves accountable to the people. So for me, what's really important is not only listening to every single person I could reach in the 20 counties across our district, which is huge, but also taking that back and seeing what else is going on in our country. Diseases don't know borders. Our water aquifers don't know borders. Our pollution in our wells sometimes doesn't even know borders. We have to have an understanding of what is going on across our country in other districts in order to really impact our entire country. So that is what is super important to me. And I think I have just a few more seconds left. So what I want to kind of remind people who are going to listen to this later on Zoom is I encourage everyone to go onto our website, see what recordings we have posted of previous forums to really understand our growth over time and who has been showing up in our district from the beginning, because I think it's important to see how we speak from our heart and how we evolve over time. So I thank you for joining us tonight, and Mary Doyle for Congress.com.
Thanks. Rebecca.
So one of the things that I had to do right away when I started working in a rural, very red, very libertarian community here in Oregon was put my judgment out the door, check my judgment at the door. And I think that's really important as we're moving ahead. I know there's a lot of folks that we're so discouraged and distraught at how on earth our country came to Trump 2.0. And in our district, we need to think about what made people do that isn't things like ignorance, bigotry, and other negative things. And if we start out with those biases, we will not be able to sit at the table and actually solve problems. And the same goes with a lot of our fellow Congress folks that we need to work with. We may have a lot of questions about their decisions, but the biggest part is to have a foundation on human dignity. Go in with the idea that you don't know everything and put your judgment in check at the door, and then bring that mutual respect, and then focus on the common ground issues. And I know I'm the first candidate in this group that just really had that as my focus, and it's because that's been my work for the past 15 years.
Thanks, Rebecca. Peter.
Well, I'm going to say something that may be unexpected, which is I don't want to work across the aisle. To me, that's nonsense. As I said earlier, the first thing I'll do is join the Problem Solvers Caucus. That's a bipartisan group, right? Currently, I think it's 12 members, 6 Democrats, 6 Republicans. I don't know why it's not 435. And then with the people who I work with, we'll just create the best ideas we can, craft the best legislation, and let people come to us and bring their ideas, and then create the legislation that will hopefully be passed and signed into law. So, I do agree with what Rebecca had to say earlier, that, that when it comes to our core, we really want the same things. We want safety. We want a nice home, a way to support our families, have a little extra set aside. I think if we focus on those core commonalities, we'll find our way to solutions.
Thank you. Dawn.
One of the first things I learned when I was a young pup getting started in my professional career, and I didn't get to talk about this too much earlier, but was to ask a lot of questions. And my own business is a resume writing business, helping people negotiate their highest level of salary and writing resumes. So I've had the opportunity to talk to over 5,000 people and ask questions. And I think that's the best place to start when we're building partisan, reaching across partisan lines, is to ask questions and not lead out the gate with really highly charged or politicized language. I belong to Braver Angels, which is a national group that is helping heal some of those wounds to get over some of that charged vernacular. So we're going to have to work together. And the main thing is, how can we start avoiding some of that charged language that immediately puts the other side in opposition and kind of get their hackles raised up? So finding that common language is really important. And then also not leading with our own belief systems, so just asking the questions and then finding and reaching that common ground. I found most time, if you can reframe what they're saying, and they are starting to feel very much more validated and heard. And that's really critical to building those communication bridges that can overcome some of these partisan divides. That's what I'm going to do.
Thank you. Patty.
One of my favorite statements is, help me to understand. And I think that's a great way to approach people. As Peter alluded to, there are certain things that are common with everybody, regardless of what party you're with. You want to make sure you can support your family, that you can afford health care, that you can get your children educated, that you can live your life the way you see fit. But we have different viewpoints on how we can achieve those things. So if we have a disagreement on something, I will reach out to the person across the aisle, because if we don't work together, we'll never get anything resolved. And our current government is a perfect example of that. So reach across the aisle and then say, okay, so you've told me what you believe we should do to correct this issue. Help me to understand that. And then I can hear what they say, and then that gives me something to talk with them about. Not argue, but say, okay, I understand that. Now, let me explain to you how I see it. And we have to open those conversations, because without it, our government is going to stay stagnant.
All right. And Chris gets the last word.
some of the best experiences I've had over the years was actually getting into other people's regions, their homes. When I was in Salem, we had a tour with the local legislator, Bob Jensen, in Umatilla and Hermiston. This was 30 years ago. You learn so much when you go into a community, as many of us are doing on our campaigning. Umatilla or Umpqua River region, we had a tour. Sandy Am River. Those tours really reminded me how important it is to get into other people's places. If I'm in Congress, I will work to bring other members of Congress, Republicans, to our district. Whether it's having hearings or just tours for 2 or 3 days, let them meet people, listen to me, build relationships with me and back to them. And then I want to go to their districts, whether it's in Alabama or South Dakota or Montana. I think going to where they are and being with them and having them come here will build the sorts of relationships that can build trust to actually pass legislation together.
Thank you very much. All right. Have everybody take a deep collective breath now. We've all these questions. Small update, the Trailblazers just beat the Spurs and playoff. Second, those of you who are missing this,
oh God, that's
corner
great.
of my room. Sorry about that, man. I forgot it. They won by 3. Okay.
Oh,
It was close.
I'm going to watch it after this.
And Virginia.
Yes.
Virginia.
And Virginia won. Yeah, those are our big.
Did they? Oh, I hadn't heard that yet.
District and Trailblazers won tonight. So those of you that are fans. All right, from here, we're going to go into our lightning round. And basically, we haven't practiced this yet, but we're going to ask you a few things, basically, that we want you to say yes or no to. It's a pretty simple yes or no vote. Now, I'm going to give you the option of doing your hands up and down. If you're more skilled and you want to do a little emoji in your screen, you're welcome to do that too.
You can go backwards.
We're just going to kind of go through them really quickly, and you can tell us how you feel about things. Everybody gets to, if you're watching, you get to watch really close to make sure everybody lines up with where you are. We'll leave it up for a little bit too, so that you can see where everybody stands. Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
If my answer is somewhere in the
I
gray,
was
can
gonna
I
say
do that too?
Yeah, you do that.
Yeah, like who knows, right? There's an emoji for that.
Okay.
All right, I'll let Kathy ask the first one.
First lightning round question. Do you support the Democrats' demand for ICE oversight and accountability before considering further funding for Homeland Security?
Yes.
All right.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear because Peter was talking. Can you please re-say that again?
Do you support the Democrats' demand for ICE oversight and accountability before considering further funding for Homeland Security?
All right. Looks like all thumbs up. Second, Bentz refuses to hold in-person town halls. Will you commit to holding at least one town hall per year in every county of the district? All right.
Do you support universal health care?
Okay. Do you support a wealth tax?
Would you accept campaign donations from AIPAC?
Okay. Would you support legislation banning members of Congress and their spouses and dependent children from owning or trading stocks?
8 Democrats voted last week against the War Powers resolution in Congress. If you were in Congress right now, would you vote for it?
Okay. The last question here in the lightning round, we have one question after this. I'm going to go down the list, and I want you to give us one word that people who know you would use to describe you. Okay? I'm starting with Mary.
Truthful.
Rebecca.
Compassionate.
Peter.
Nerd.
Dawn.
Fire.
Patty.
Tenacious.
And Chris.
Authentic.
All right. Okay, the final question we want to ask you tonight is going to be posed by Kathy.
All right. I think we can all agree that Cliff Bentz has earned an F. Why are you the best candidate to beat him? And we will start with Rebecca.
So I have 15 years of experience of building trust and collaboration with rural folks, and the vast majority of the folks that I worked with for the past 10 are the very people that have voted for Trump and Cliff Bentz. And as I've gone throughout the district and had conversations with folks, I've been incredibly careful to make sure that my message focuses constantly on common ground, collaboration, and does not up the ante of kind of vengeful talk. I also am not just running because Trump is such a disaster. I am running because our government has been broken for 20 to 30 years. We have not gotten enough done. And to me, Trump happened because we have a broken government. So if all we're doing is trying to get him out of office, we end up with a broken government. And I think our constituents understand that, and they want more than just flipping the person that's leading the executive office.
Thank you, Rebecca. Peter?
Well, I alluded earlier to having big ideas to bringing that. I'm also a person of faith. I think that ties me to the people in the district. We're connected by our different faiths. In my case, it's Jewish, and I follow the teachings of Tikkun Olam, which means to heal the world. And what that means is that each of us can heal our little piece of the world, just what's within our reach to make better. And if we all do that, we will heal the world. And I think that's a message that would inspire and bring together people from all sections, all parts of our community. I've been a performer my whole life, and I think that maybe it takes a performer to get people to come out and vote and participate. An entertainer, somebody who can bring fire and passion to this race and nerdiness.
Thank you, Peter. Dawn?
You know, I have pretty much been the leader of the pack here, getting around the state, and it's not so much the miles, but all the people I've met. And one of the things I'm finding is that voters on both sides of the equation, both Democrats and Republicans and non-affiliated voters, are simply, number one, they're hurting. They want to be heard. They want someone they can trust. And they also want someone who will actually listen to them and validate what their concerns are. And so that's been the whole basis of what I've been doing, is I can overcome some of those barriers, as I've already alluded to, by using language that is not inflammatory and actually asking people where they're at. What are their biggest concerns? And when you show compassion, when you show concern, when you show up in all those different corners, it's pretty much the proof in the pudding in my mind that you are there to commit, not just during the primary, but also during the general, and then afterwards by being the candidate who's getting across the state. And that's why they wrote this in the description for this House of Representatives, is you need to be out in the district twice. In 2 years, you have to be going through the district over and over and over again to keep those valid concerns back to Washington. And that's what I'm going to do, because that's what needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Patty?
I actually like and care about people, something I don't think Cliff can say. And all the people I have spoken to, I think they would agree with that. And the people of this district are my number one focus. They will always come before any type of corporation or wealthy person. That's why I only take donations from individuals. I said early on in my campaign, I don't take money from corporations or PACs, definitely will not let super PACs endorse me, because I don't want to be beholden to them. Any decision I make is going to be made for the benefit of the people in this district. And I will learn what they need, as Dawn said, by getting out and talking to them. Unlike our current representative, I'm not scared by people. I actually enjoy them. And I'm a friend, and I will make sure I'm always available.
Thank you, Patty. Chris?
I've had a life in public service. I've served in a legislative body. I've worked in the legislature. I've worked in Washington for 6 years. I think I understand the federal government. So I think I can start the job when I'm there and move quickly and get some things done. I have endorsements from John Kitzhaber, a former governor. Steve Grasty, a Democratic former commissioner from Harney County, is endorsing me. Kathy Shaw, a longtime mayor of Ashland, is endorsing me. I have people who value what I can do in Washington. Also, I've worked on campaigns since 1986. I've been involved in all kinds of campaigns, and I've watched campaigns change and try to understand how they work today. I think I can do a great job running a fabulous campaign this summer and fall and motivate already active people, but energize a lot of the young people who want to get involved with saving the country. And I think I have the skills and will have people around me to run a bang-up job to defeat Cliff over the summer and fall.
Thank you, Chris. And finally, Mary.
I'm glad I got my sneezes out of the way. I think I'm the strongest candidate to be Cliff Bentz because I've lived combined and worked and owned property within our district. I have owned, worked, and lived in Union, Hood River, adjacent counties, Crook County, Deschutes County, Klamath County. I know what it means to be in these counties and what federal policies do to harm the people that can live in these counties. So I come with a specific, actionable policy, and that's what wins in both the primary and the general. And I know this district because I've worked in it as an educator, as a student services coordinator, as a union leader at our local and our state level. I understand healthcare gaps, housing shortages, and school funding from the ground up. I've worked in poverty schools. Some of the stories I could tell, I can't repeat because they're just, it's just trauma. But what I want to say is that I can bring clear, specific policy, not slogans. And I think if you're entrenched in the party and you bring in these previous experiences, you're not going to be able to think outside the box. And that's what this district needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Terry, you want to wrap us up?
Absolutely. I just want to say how much admiration I have for all of you by stepping up to run. It is a big step to do this. It's hard. People don't always realize how much you carry on your back every day when you're in a campaign, trying to make sure that you cover all your bases and you show up where you need to show up and you say the right things. And I just want to say you're all amazing, and I'm just delighted that we have such an amazing cast of characters to choose from for this primary. Whoever wins in May, I hope we are all in behind that person, no matter, this is a hard choice for people of District 2 to make. But I think you're all amazing, and I just hope that everyone has learned more about you tonight, and that it's not.
Can I just add one thing?
Easier.
Only Democrats can vote in the primary. So if you're not a registered Democrat, please consider registering so you can vote.
Yeah. Well, I think we've missed that deadline. I think if it was this.
Oh, is it already passed?
I think it
thought
passed
it was.
It's next Tuesday.
Yeah, February
Deadline is
28th.
next Tuesday.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. And then after May 19th, whoever emerges from this, I hope that we all get all in and we learn how to campaign and work together to defeat Mr. Bentz. There are more forums coming up. I know there's one on Saturday night by Democracy 250, which is a little different format where you're going to be put into smaller groups and be able to sit and discuss issues on that basis, which I'm kind of looking forward to. And I know there's more than that. If you want to know more about these candidates, the Coin Chronicle website has a link to all of their campaign websites. So please go there. You can track all of them there.
Carrie, can I just say the other two forums that we have on our calendar if people want to know? The 26th, which is Sunday evening, I believe it's at 5:30, we'll be at the Medford Library for a forum hosted by the Peace Corps alumni. And then next week on April 30th, we have a forum that's being done over Zoom through the League of Women Voters. And that one is also actually both the forum for this Saturday and actually I think the 3 remaining forums are open for Democrats and Republicans to be a part of. So a unique opportunity for everyone.
And I also want to point out that not every option, like the Peace Corps, allows for a Zoom in. So people like me who work Monday through Friday, we're not allowed to participate. And I think voters also need to take that in consideration. Is like, we're not showing up because we don't want to. It's just that there's technological constraints and work requirements as well.
Can't be everywhere.
I want to remind us, I'm going to take everybody off of highlight so that our friend Claudia, sorry, my brain went dead, can talk about a mock recall that she's having. So hang on while I remove all of these spotlights, if everybody would.
Well, first of all, thank you, candidates, for coming and for sharing your wisdom and your insight. So I'm Claudia Stevens. I'm on the steering committee for the ORD2 Indivisible. And I have this idea as part of the federal team to do an action where we are doing a mock recall for Cliff Bentz. Not that the Constitution does not speak to this, so the interpretation is we cannot recall officially, but what we can do is collect signatures across this district so that we can present them to the congressman so that he can see how many people are really upset about what he's doing. I'm working with the Rural Organizing Project, and we do have our signature page, and our QR code has gotten out. And so far, we're probably like a third of the way to my goal. So I would like to put the QR code up right now. And then I'll also put that in the chat if you'd like to download it. And can put my number too to help any of you that are interested. This is not, because it's not an actual no one's going to look at the voter rolls. So if you're speaking to someone, they say, oh, well, not sure, I'm not registered at this address. None of that matters. It's really like, do you live in this district? And we're going to present them, and he's not going to spend time cross-checking. So we want to be not getting outside the spirit of it, but we don't need to be defined as we would in any kind of other signature. So
in the last minute, I just like to remind everyone that in 2 weeks, our next meeting falls on election night. And so we're going to do a watch party. And so you are welcome to bring a glass of something or a bottle of something, whatever you're going to need on that particular evening.
Wait, Terry, the next one we're going to be talking about a ballot measure, and then the following one is the watch party.
Right.
Yeah.
There's 2 in May.
Yeah, there's 2 in May.
First one, we're going to be talking about ballot measures, and then the second one's going to be the watch party. So please mark those on your calendar. First and third Tuesdays is when we always meet. We hope that you have enjoyed tonight, and if you're new to this, that you'll return and visit with us on those first and third Tuesdays. And again, thanks to all of our candidates for showing up tonight. You were spectacular.
Thank you.
Thank you.